Hey, my name's Julian Steel. I'm a musician, multi-instrumentalist, producer from Melbourne.
How did you get into music?
Um, so I started off, um, I guess as a busker. Like that was sort of my main thing for a very long period. Um, it started, I think I was maybe 9 the first time I went busking. Um, and like my mum took me with my full drum kit out to the corner of Ackland Street, like where the vineyard is,
Yeah,
corner of Ackland.
that's
That's
really young. Nine, start busking.
yeah. I was tiny, and I I'd learnt a bunch of beats, and I had this one beat that would always it always went off their beat because of the kind of crowds that St Kilda would attract on the weekend. Everyone was there, either shopping or out to have lunch and have a drink. And I'd play this like sort of like four to the floor groove with an go bell, and it'd just get everybody dancing. And I think at the time, because I was so little and I had like this little afro hair bob thing, whatever it was. Um, but the young factor was like definitely on my side because years later and I was like, I kept going back because it was super successful. Um, and I invested the money that I made in like getting a little recording set up so I could make a. This sort of came a bit like further down the track when I was about 13 or 14, and I made my own sort of little demo of covers, like a cover EP basically, and I'd sell that for $10. Um, but it was a really good platform because it sort of launched me into a bunch of other endeavors. When I used to come back to try and do the drum thing, the solo drum thing, like after I hit puberty, it just people didn't give a fuck. They were like, "What are you doing? Like you're just a teenager being annoying on the street, making
Yeah.
noise." Um, and so I shifted, and then I started doing like I picked up guitar and keys a bit more, and I just play like classic songs from Bill Withers to Grover Washington Jr. That kind of stuff. Just like songs that everyone knows and loves, and I just recreate them like in a sort of improv jazz sort of guitar style, I guess. Um,
Because
and
you've taught yourself all the like you know a bunch of instruments. Have
yeah, I guess the rhythm section instruments are like what I'm okay at. I've just picked up trumpet, but I'm really like struggling with it. It's a tough instrument, um, but that's also because I've never played like a wind instrument, so it's like learning the controllers completely different. It's very foreign. Um, Everything else was self-taught except for drums, which I went to study for.
do you feel like that's something that's like worth the time and like people investing in like in a full degree in music?
Yes, in yeah, for like a post grad. For me, it was kind of a for like yeah, coming out of that high school course, it was sort of a given. Like I wasn't gonna do 6 years of like intensive music training and then not keep at least get some sort of like formal certification. But for anyone who's not in that position, I think it's a brilliant thing for not only for your like your playing and your yeah, like your technical capacity, but also networking. For me, like uni was like one of the major things that, and even now, I've got a list of guys who I'll call on if I've got a specific, um, well, gig. Not so much anymore right now. Hopefully in future, but if it's like a recording thing,
Yeah.
um, I said this recently on a Zoom interview that I did for Box Hill Institute, and I was saying for um, the guys who are doing the production course that one of the things that I've found to be super beneficial is transcribing, but in the music production sense. So it's not the same if like I'd sit here transcribing like a saxophone solo and trying to figure out the notes, like I was saying, and put a slow playback speed, but listening to the production of a song and being like, all right, I'm going to recreate this. Like, what sound is that? Blah blah. And the more you do that, the more you become in tune with like, um, even little things like I heard a track the other day and I was like, oh, that's that D50 preset, or that's that like DX7 sound that I know, like I know the preset in my head. Like it might have some effects on it and stuff, but that kind of stuff will really help you, just in, yeah, like understanding how to like bring out ideas and put, or even bring it to your own music and be like, oh, this is a cool sort of idea that XYZ used, or like Disclosure does this, maybe I'm going to try and do this in my next production. You know what I mean?
And so, what was your first steps into the industry? Like when you started like actually interacting with like I would say the big players. Like how did that go? What was like your first impressions and stuff?
Yeah, there were kind of, I guess it was very like staggered, like along the way. I've done like a bunch of cool things just for different people. Um, I've found for the most part when it comes to like bigger artists or artists who are like just starting to blow up, I've always been like right place at the wrong time, if that makes sense. So like when Vance Joy was coming up, I was playing, like I was rehearsing for his shows, and I think I was in like year 11 or something. I was like 17, and they were just about to, like, this is when he put out Riptide, and it was like it just started to pick up and gain traction. Um, and their tour manager was like, "Ah, like we'd love to have you on board." And I'd like learnt all the material, and I was like so amped. And they're like, "We'd love to have you on board, but like you're still at school, and we're about to go do this like." I think they were just about to start international touring. Um, and then yeah, and they kind of just kicked off, and I was like, all right, it's all good, like, you know, I'll find something else. And then the same thing happened with like three more projects with sort of up and coming artists. um, but it's all, at the end of the day, it's all just really good sort of like learning experience. um, a, to be in the rehearsals and meet the people who are doing this stuff, and then B, just to like to get a perspective of like what they're doing, because at the end of the day it's sort of, to me it's almost like a foreshadowing thing, like it's okay that that didn't work because you're meant to be doing something else.
Those other projects that you were very close to, you got to see how they were successful, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And yeah, so that, like I said, it's good insight into the industry, and just seeing sort of what people are really into. Because I remember there were times in certain rehearsals where like we'd be playing, so let's say like a new record that they were working on, and I'd be thinking, man, this is like, I don't know if I'm like really into this, and then 4 weeks later it comes out on Triple J and it's like the most played song, and I'm just like, what? Like, how does this work? Um, but that just kind of also goes to show that the industry is very like, it can be the complete opposite of what you expect it to be. Something that you, and like I won't say any names here because like, you know, don't want to offend anyone.
Yeah, that's right.
But something that you think is like, to my ear, I was like, psh, this record sucks. And then it's like all over the radio, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess it doesn't suck.
Yeah, I have a
Um,
very recent track that's come out about, oh, it's probably like 3 weeks ago, and I 100% dislike it, and I have so many friends that love it, and I'm like,
yeah,
this is like a rehash of a song from 20 years ago.
that's the thing. It's, oh wait, tell me it's not that. I, that
Yeah,
one for me, I fucking hate that shit. It makes me so angry.
yeah.
Um, I feel you on that. I guess, I don't know. It's a tough one because it's that like that experience of working with those people is really good, and it's like maybe if you emulate this kind of thing, it'll, you know, you'll get some success from it. But at the same time, you don't want to, like, you want to be true to yourself. I'm not going to make tracks that I think are going to be successful, but then I don't like them. Um,
I mean, that touches on like commercialization versus like your own artistic, originality, I
yeah,
guess. Yeah.
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 And then it also ties into like one of the reasons why I've sort of struggled releasing music of my own, because of my like, I know sort of like a percentage of my audience, and I know that even though it's a very small percentage, I know that they're all musically, you know, these are all people that I look up to and that kind of thing. And when I'm playing instruments that aren't necessarily my first instrument, it's like the inner perfectionist in me goes, no, you can't release this, you can't release this, or at least like not until it's like insane
Yeah.
or like on another level. But yeah, then it's a really tough one because it's, you know, now time's flying by and I've put out 2 tracks and everyone knows that I've been doing this for like years and years and years. Um, 2 tracks of my own, I should say. I've put out like probably 30 or 40 songs for other artists in the last year or two. So I am keeping busy. But then yeah, when it's like original stuff, it seems to be like, yeah, there's a lot of roadblocks along the way.
Would you have any advice to someone who's like starting off, like maybe even advice to yourself when you were younger or to someone else, how they would take, starting off into the music industry?
Um, yeah, I think one big thing is, especially like for younger people, don't expect everything right away. There was like there was a time I remember when I was maybe like 13 or 14, and or even when I started playing in a trio, and like we got some attention from like some A&R people and like headhunter people who wanted to like transform us and turn us into like a pop, like Aussie pop group. And there was a time when I was just so about that, and I was like, yes, this is gonna be sick. Like we're gonna start touring and all this stuff. And then we realized like how scummy they actually were, and like they showed us the kind of records they wanted us to be making, and it was just so far away from what we were doing. Um, so I think one piece of advice is like don't expect too much in like the initial stages, you know. But like to give some perspective, it's taken me up until now to do like last year I played um, same as George actually. We both like one after the other. We both played at Beyond the Valley on the main stage, and so like I've done festival gigs before. That wasn't like a new thing, but like just as like a, you know, to get an idea of like, it wasn't like I started playing and then 2 years later I was playing festivals. It was like 10 years later, and then I started, you know, flying around and playing shows in different places for different artists. But I think if you can make sure you spread yourself in many different areas, um, that's been a very helpful thing for me. Like learning to DJ and being able to say, yeah, I can play this person's show if they just need you to DJ and like play their tracks. Um, or yeah, I can MD this project if you need like, you know, the arrangements to be tighter for a live show, blah blah blah. Having like, I mean, it's fine to be like focused on one particular thing and be really good at that. Um, but the more, yeah, I've found a lot more work comes from like doing exactly that, spreading yourself out and just being like, you know, having a foot in a few different doors. Just be wary because it does. I got to a point last year where I was like so all over the place in terms of different projects and doing different things and just saying yes to everything. Try and be very specific in what you accept, because a lot of the time, especially when you're not getting any benefit out of it, and I spent a lot of time doing things for people for like little to no, like whether it's financial return or like experiential return, if that makes sense. Um, it kind of wasn't, yeah, it wasn't doing it for me, and I was pouring in all these hours, and it's like, well, at the end of the day, it's like, am I benefiting from this, or is it just me trying to help out another artist?
Yeah.
In the early days, I encouraged that tenfold. And I was doing that. I was recording for people for free, blah blah blah.
And
But yeah, I think it's knowing your worth as well. That's a big thing.
yeah, that's a tough one also. Knowing your worth is, I mean, it's a question that comes up. It's like, how much do you sell an album for, or
Mm.
stuff like that, or like a
Yeah,
song. It's hard
yeah,
to put
that's true.
a number on artwork, I guess. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
and
for
so, out
sure.
of all these gigs that you started doing, or you didn't, like, beyond the valley, as you mentioned, um,
Hmm.
is there anyone that stands out to you, like your favorite moment?
When one moment that I'll like always remember, just from like being so like geeked about it was when I was playing with Kate in Sydney at the Enmore Theatre, which is kind of like the Forum equivalent in Sydney. Um, and we were supporting the internet. And I remember after the show, like it all went really well. Um, and then after the show, I just remember being in the green room, and like it was like the whole internet crew, and then like the Sticky Fingers crew came out of nowhere, and they were just all these different crews converging. We're all just chilling in the green room. Someone was like hotboxing the crap out of it. Um, but that was one of those moments that was like, all right, this is chilling. Um, that was cool. It was just sort of one of those moments, and there's been a few like that when it comes to like, you know, artist areas and backstage and that kind of thing, where you just bump into people, um, and like even bumping into like Mahalia last, was it this year or last year, at Laneway. That was a bit of a trip. Um, but yeah, little moments like that that have been really fun. Not necessarily on stage moments either. I think a lot of the like the behind the stage stuff is really cool.
And so, in terms of the industry itself, I know like, are there any pain points you find like in how the industry is structured? Like the loopholes you have to go through or stuff like that? Is there anything?
Hmm. Um, I think I will say that in the age of like streaming and all of that kind of stuff, it's definitely a lot harder to get yourself out there. Um, that's maybe not a loophole, but I think just the whole idea of like, particularly right now where we can't do shows for like, you know, single release or album launch or whatever. Um, the fact that it's all very social media driven and PR related in a sense just sort of makes it yeah, I guess it makes it tough because it's more of a financial burden. um, you know, obviously there are ways to do that more organically, you know, to get more people checking out your records and whatever. um, but I definitely think that's like one of the things in the industry right now that is like a bit of an issue for, especially for up and coming artists who haven't yet even had the chance to, you know, play a show or anything like that.
As COVID is, wreaking rampage through society these days, how do you see it
Mm.
changing the music industry itself? Because, like as you said, there's going to be a lot of like live streams, stuff like that. Do you think it's going to actually change the industry?
Yeah, I mean, definitely it already has. Um, one of the things that one of my friends said to me, who I've like a friend who I've been gigging with for quite a while, that really got to me because like at the time he said this right at the very beginning, and I was sort of just like, nah, man, that's like, you know, don't be like that. Have some optimism. But he was like, the golden era of gigging is dead, and I was like, no, no, it's not. But then the more I think about it, like it is in a sense because it's going to take so much longer to get back to where it was in terms of venues capacity and like how many people they're allowed, and then even in terms of like, you know, payment, like fees, thinking about, I think DJ gigs will come back like fairly soon just because venues can afford that. It's not, you know, it's not paying for a trio or a quartet or whatever. um, but when it comes to like live and like instrumentalists and that kind of thing, um, even something like the Toff jam nights on a Tuesday night that we started like 3 years ago, 4 years ago now, and there were nights where that was like absolutely heaving, and it was, you know, it was a Tuesday night at 11 p.m. onwards. Something that was something that I was doing all throughout my uni period. And like the thought of having that now, even though it was like financially it wasn't worthwhile for any of us, but it was also like completely improvised jam, so it was like fun for $50. But now to conceive like that happening again, not with like obviously restrictions in place like they are now. If we can manage to maintain some sort of like low case number average for X amount of time where we feel like it's safe, I don't think until until there's like a vaccine available, it'll go back to being anything like that. Or even like Section 8, just having like, being packed out, people shoulder to shoulder. Um, and that's hard because a lot of artists relied on that for their part of their revenue. If you've got a show and you're selling tickets, that's a big part of the show. The merch and selling records is like a little thing, especially in the age of streaming. We can all put out as many records as we possibly could in the next year or so, but we're not going to make anywhere near enough as like compared to the amount of time that we were to put into said album or whatever.
And that touches on how like streaming obviously doesn't really pay artists. Like, so
I was reading a statistic this morning that was like, it was just sort of showing how much each platform is paying out.
Well, Spotify is like 0.006.
And minimum wage was like for YouTube to earn minimum wage off streams, you need 2.1 million hits.
Is that?
And that's like a monthly minimum wage in the US. Hey, my name's Julian Steel. I'm a musician, multi-instrumentalist, producer from Melbourne. You can check out my stuff. I've got a few records out on streaming services. If you just search Julian Steel on Instagram, Facebook, any of the social media platforms, that's me.